Hey everyone, Ewan here for Whatculture, and well, it's happened. The big kahuna, the whole tamale. There's no way of sugarcoating this really, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say that this is the worst movie news we've been hit with in a good long while. As you know, Netflix, the leading streaming service provider on the globe, is poised to complete a takeover of Warner Bros. Discovery, making it the custodian of Hollywood's most storied movie studio, and with it the likes of DC Comics and all the goodies that they entail. Oh boy. So yeah, naturally this move has vomited up a whole bunch of terrifying hypotheticals and concerns. Such as, what will happen to Warner Bros. Theatrical model now that the guy who is publicly on record as saying he does not believe in cinemas is now in charge? What will happen to the Warner Archive and its physical media releases? HBO, Warner Bros. Games, DC Comics? Cast your eyes around the movie community right now and I promise you're gonna see a whole bunch of sad faces. Except Lenny. He seems pretty happy. This is the worst day of my life. Now, it is worth noting before we go all doom and gloom here that there's still a long way to go with all of this. The deal will have to undergo political scrutiny under the FCC, and the commander-in-chief himself, Donald Trump, has over the weekend said that the deal could be a quote-unquote problem. Film and TV is cool, but you know what else is cool? Protecting your privacy online. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 3 months free if you sign up today. I'd make that deal. Damn good deal. But the winds are clearly blowing in a certain way here. In the absence of a mass public backlash to match the industry anger that we've seen over the weekend, it's more than likely that Netflix will close its $82.7 billion acquisition of WB, and the movie industry will face its biggest crisis since the COVID pandemic. For WB head David Zaslav, it spells the next chapter in a continuing story of what I can only describe as gross pop cultural vandalism ever since he took the reins as head of WB in 2022. A tenure which has seen the business cancel finished films for tax write-off purposes, propose cuts to archiving icons like TCM, and also focus more heavily on quote-unquote leveraging intellectual property at the expense of original cinema. This isn't the end for Zaz, but it feels like a fitting mid-season finale, selling off one of Hollywood's most prestigious studios to the entity directly opposed to the cinematic landscape. And yeah, I don't really know where we go from here. I've gone on and on and on at Whatculture about the menace of streaming so many times, which, yeah, is maybe a little hyperbolic, but in case you are genuinely unbothered about this deal and don't see the big hubbub as to why so many industry figures are sounding the alarm and going, ah, well, let's go into a little bit more detail. Okay, so first and foremost is Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos. His comments about movie theaters go way back, and they don't make for good reading if you're a cinema boy, a cinema dude, a cinema guy-a-rooney. It's really bad. Just back in April, Sarandos called the movie theater model outdated, saying that most Americans are no longer able to walk to a multiplex. He also argued that theatrical windows should be shortened so that movies can make it to video on demand and streaming services more quickly, both processes that he has expedited himself through the algorithmic trudge of convenience that's, peddled by his business. The call is literally coming from inside the house. I totally understand the irony of plugging a Netflix show here, but it's literally the I think you should leave hot dog moment. It's just right there. Oh no, people can't walk to the cinema anymore. Ignoring all the stuff in regards to walkable cities and how heavily motorized America is as a country. If cinemas are closing and there's less of them to actually walk to, it probably is because you killed them, Ted. With Netflix. This is Netflix's whole thing. It's its whole MO. But Ewan, I hear you ask. Netflix has put loads of movies in theaters over the years, and they have. Sort of. Netflix is interested in getting movies in theaters, but only to satiate its want for Hollywood prestige. Giving movies like The Irishman or Frankenstein a week or two in cinemas makes them eligible for precious sweet, delicious award success. They would probably much rather they didn't have to do this, as it provides non-subscribers with a means of watching their productions. But it's a demand many filmmakers who work with Netflix maintain and advocate for nonetheless. Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig have been particularly vocal about advocating for the Knives Out films to be given wider theatrical releases. But again, this stands in direct opposition to Netflix's long-term strategy. Less butts in theaters, and more on couches where watch time retention is king, and that king is doing everything it can to stop you from being curious about what it is you're actually watching. But why advocate for the cinema so passionately? Well, obviously watching films at home is a great convenience. Movies were made as art for the big screen, to be enjoyed surrounded by other people in a setting whereby we undertake something of a ritual. We leave our house, move around, and ideally sit down in a darkened room where the sound and image combine in a larger-than-life way, and thus more easily spirit us away to the fantasy unfolding on screen. This experience can be easily undermined by assholes who ignore the social contract of being a decent human being in a public setting, as well as inflation and chain cinemas not really taking pride in the service they provide. But this is the best way to watch film, and anyone who attends a rep screening of a classic they've only seen on TV before will tell you that it's transformative. Like, I genuinely cannot overstate just how impressive it was to finally watch The Silence of the Lambs on a big screen for the first time. The sense of claustrophobia that you get from that film, and particularly in the scenes where Clarice Starling meets Hannibal Lecter for the first time, wow, it is just truly impressive, and it's one of those where clearly you are given a whole different experience from being in a cinema surrounded by like-minded people, both enjoying and soaking up just the image in the way it was originally intended to be seen. Heck, to use a more recent example, we all adored that moment in The Batman where the Batmobile ignites the first time and it's just so good. On TV, would that moment have landed with nearly the same kind of heft or relevance? Gonna go ahead and shake my magic 8-ball here and say that the outlook ain't so good on that particular hypothetical. I went on about this quite heavily in my physical media video from a few months back, which you should go watch because it's a genuinely great time. But there's a real movement from big tech companies to rob you of the rituals that make hobbies hobbies. The act of watching a film, reading a book, going out for a meal, these are all deliberate, conscious choices that require movement and commitment. They are fundamentally sensorial. The apps rob you of that. Convenience breeds disposability to the point where numerous studios are now pursuing what is called second screen content. That is, film and TV that is designed to be consumed while people scroll Instagram Reels or X or whatever brain rot they've found to dwell on for the remainder of their day. Heck, that brain rot could be me. And I gotta tell you, I'm privileged to be your brain rot. Hopefully. Hopefully that's not a lofty expectation. I could be someone's brain rot, right? Right? I hope so. Anyway, yeah, cumulatively, this has the effect of undermining the craft and skill of the medium of film and of further avenues to escape from a digital-first existence. This sounds very doomy and sad, and again, I want to emphasize that streaming can exist in tandem with a fulfilling existence, obviously, but companies like Netflix, I don't think they care about that. It's why they shrink the end credits of a movie and roll on the autoplay for the next TV show or film for you to binge. It's why Disney releases The Simpsons in a cursed aspect ratio, and why Amazon fills your feed with AI-generated thumbnails and dodgy colorizations of black and white classics. All of this together, and yeah, it's clear that Netflix is not the guy for Warner Brothers. It's a bad move all around. Zaslav himself illustrated that he was a poor custodian of the studio, but there are still at least core tenets to the business model, of which the theatrical window, original productions, and to a far lesser extent, obviously, physical media, formed a part of. Netflix will obviously produce original content using WB IP. We can expect the Batman 2 and James Gunn's DC movies to keep on chugging. But as far as owning a piece of that is concerned, well, the odds aren't heavily in our favor. Netflix has sporadically dabbled with physical releases, but more often than not, it has been left to boutique labels like Criterion to fulfill that demand. The Warner Archive is a treasure trove of the studio's history, and only recently we've seen WB develop 4K restorations of classics like John Ford's The Searchers. Will Netflix be all that enthused about restoring another of Ford's westerns like My Darling Clementine? Call me pessimistic, but I just don't see it. So yeah, altogether, this news stinks, and it's no surprise that Hollywood figures are rallying to criticize the move and that serious political opposition towards the deal is now brewing. Variety reported last week that an anonymous collective of Hollywood figures wrote to both Republican and Democratic members of Congress to lobby against the deal, calling it a quote-unquote noose around the theatrical marketplace. Again, this is all heavy language, but the concern is genuine and, I believe, legitimate. Netflix is no friend of the movies as we know them, and this takeover, should it go through, feels like a bit of a robbery. Not just of a Hollywood studio, but potentially, in the long term, another ritual that makes us us. But I want to know what you all think on the Netflix WB deal down in the comments below. Are you equally as concerned, or do you not care? Do you actually want to see more stuff on Netflix? Let us know down there. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to Whatculture for more juicy and spicy hot takes like this every single day. Either way, I've been Ewan. Thank you for watching. I'll hopefully catch you next time. Bye.